Hello and welcome back. Now that we have completed the scheduling of events, let's register callback functions on these events. I am registering this callback function to the MLB recurring event hook as an add action and then registering this event callback function to the event name. I am passing the default value or priority and I am passing 2 as the number of arguments because the arguments value 1 and value 2 will be passed as separate arguments like argument 1 and argument 2. So in argument 1 we'll get value 1 and in argument 2 we'll get value 2. I'm just updating these values in the options table to see whether our cron event executes as expected. Similarly, you can do this for single event as well. This is our single event hook, the same register callback function and updated these two here with the MLB single event option name. Now you can see in the WP control plugin, the two events have been registered, MLB single event and MLB recurring event. These will execute at the set time. You can also execute this by clicking on Run Now. If I execute it from here, it says the event has been run and the original event will not be affected. Now, let's check the database. I will go to the options table, do a search with the option name, and then query MLB single event. You can see the value 1 and value 2 is stored as an array here. Similarly, if I run MLB recurring event and then do a search for it, it will have the same value stored. In the callback function, whatever logic you have implemented will be executed. You can also see that these arguments have been passed on these events. These are static arguments that I have passed. The arguments can also be dynamic depending on the use cases. This is the action that the callback function has registered on. From here also you can see how this interface or this plugin can provide more information, like if you want to know what events have been registered by some plugin and in which file you can see the action, the callback function for that event. You can also see the recurrences and the display names for the user. Now when it comes to deleting the scheduled events, sometimes developers forget to unschedule events set by their plugin. For example, let's talk about the movie library plugin. I have just installed this plugin for testing purposes to see what the plugin features were provided. And these events have been scheduled on the init hook. But after some time or few days after testing or checking, let's say I deactivated the plugin. These events will remain scheduled and when they are executed by WordPress, it may cause an error since there is no callback function available for it to run as we deactivated the plugin. However, it will simply execute the hook and keep rescheduling these events again and again because we haven't unscheduled them. As a developer, we have to keep in mind that when we deactivate, we should also unschedule the hooks. So, in the deactivation hook, you can simply unschedule the events using WP unschedule hook. In this deactivation hook, I unscheduled these two hooks, MLB recurring event and MLB single event. If I go now to the plugins section and deactivate the plugin, you can see that the events that we have scheduled are no longer in the registered cron event list. This is how we can remove events using the plugin activation or deactivation hook. Now, let me activate it again. And now if I go back and see, these two events have been scheduled again on the init hook. Also, the options, like these are the two options that I used for demo, can be removed during deactivation. This way we can unschedule the events. However, there is a catch. If you go to the documentation, there is another function, WP unscheduled event. This function can be used to unschedule an event, but it requires the hook, the arguments, as well as the timestamp. Without arguments, you cannot unschedule an event. So in this example, we have provided a timestamp and using the WP next schedule function, we get the timestamp. We can pass this timestamp along with the hook name. In our case, since we also passed the arguments when scheduling the event, WP unschedule event also requires these arguments to uniquely identify the event. For example, if we schedule the recurring event with different arguments and assume those arguments are dynamic, we cannot always retrieve these dynamic arguments during the deactivation hook. In that case, we can't use the WP schedule event. Instead, I have used the WP unschedule hook function. This function unschedules all the events attached to the same hook. To use this function, I only need to pass the hook name to unschedule everything associated with it. To differentiate, the WP unschedule event function creates a unique key using these arguments, and this key is used to remove the event from the cron array list. On the other hand, in the WP unschedule hook, it simply removes all the events attached to the same hook, even with different arguments. There is also another function WP clear scheduled hook which unschedules all events attached to the hook with specific arguments. For example, if the same MLB recurring event is scheduled with different arguments, WP clear scheduled hook will clear all of them. If multiple events are scheduled with the same arguments, this function will be particularly helpful. You can go through the WP includes cron.php file to understand all the functions in more detail and how they work behind the scene. Now, let's talk about the disadvantages of WP cron. We know that the WordPress cron executes on page load. So whenever a user visits your site, the cron will be run. But this could be disadvantageous if your site doesn't get much traffic, as the scheduled events might not run at the exact time you want. To solve this, you can use a system task scheduler. First, disable the WordPress cron by setting the disable WP cron constant to true. This prevents the WordPress from executing the cron events on page load. Then you can set up the system's task scheduler, such as cron tab on Linux or macOS or PowerShell on Windows, to execute the wp-cron.php file at specific time intervals. By doing so, the system scheduler will execute the WordPress cron events at the desired times, avoiding the disadvantages of WordPress cron only running on page loads. In conclusion, you can use system schedulers like cron tab or task scheduler can help you manage your cron events more precisely and solve the issues related to page load based execution. For simple testing of WordPress cron, you can create a plugin and use WP CLI commands like WP cron event list or WP cron event run to check your scheduled events. You can also call functions like WP cron array and set cron array to check if these events are added to the options table. Additionally, the WP Cron Troll plugin is very helpful for debugging and finding information about WordPress cron events. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Jai WordPress!